A black teen inherited a mysterious warehouse. What was locked in the safe took his breath away. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and official, bearing the seal of Henderson and Associates law firm. Marcus Johnson almost threw it in the trash, assuming it was another piece of junk mail addressed to his grandmother. But something about the way his name was written in elegant script across the envelope made him pause. Marcus Elijah Johnson. He read aloud, his 16-year-old voice cracking slightly on his middle name. Nobody ever used his full name except his grandmother when he was in trouble, and she'd been gone for 3 months now. His hands trembled as he tore open the envelope. The legal language swam before his eyes at first, words like beneficiary and estate settlement dancing across the page. But then one paragraph jumped out at him like a neon sign. We are pleased to inform you that you have inherited property from the estate of Elijah Washington Johnson, your great-great-grandfather. Said property consists of a warehouse located at 1247 Industrial Boulevard, along with all contents therein. Marcus dropped into his grandmother's old rocking chair, the same chair where she used to tell him stories about their family's past. A warehouse? He'd never even heard of a great-great-grandfather named Elijah, let alone knew he owned property. His family had always lived in the same modest neighborhood, scraping by on his mother's nursing salary and his part-time job at the corner store. "Mom!" he called out, but then remembered she was pulling a double shift at the hospital. The house felt eerily quiet, filled only with the tick of the old wall clock and the distant hum of traffic. The next morning, Marcus stood before the towering brick building on Industrial Boulevard, clutching the rusty keys the lawyer had given him. The warehouse loomed above him like a giant from another era, its red brick facade weathered but sturdy. Weeds grew through cracks in the sidewalk, and graffiti decorated the lower walls, but something about the building commanded respect. The heavy metal door groaned as Marcus pushed it open, and a wave of musty air rushed out to greet him. Dust particles danced in the streams of sunlight that filtered through grimy windows high above. The space was enormous, easily the size of a basketball court, and filled with shadows that seemed to hold secrets. Marcus's footsteps echoed as he walked deeper into the warehouse, his phone's flashlight cutting through the gloom. Wooden crates were stacked along the walls, some bearing faded shipping labels from decades past. An old desk sat in one corner, its surface covered with a thick layer of dust. Everything felt frozen in time, as if someone had simply walked away one day and never returned. "This place is incredible," Marcus whispered to himself, his voice swallowed by the vastness around him. As he explored, something caught his eye near the back wall. One section of the wooden floor looked different from the rest, newer somehow, despite the dust that covered everything. He knelt down and brushed away years of accumulated grime, revealing planks that didn't quite match the others. His heart began to race. In all the mystery novels he'd devoured, loose floorboards always meant hidden treasure. But this was real life, not fiction. Still, curiosity got the better of him. Marcus found a crowbar among the tools scattered on a nearby workbench. The floorboards creaked and protested as he pried them up, each groan echoing through the cavernous space. Beneath the planks, wrapped in what looked like an old tarp, was something that made his breath catch. A safe. Not just any safe, but an old-fashioned one that looked like it belonged in a bank from the movies. It was about the size of a small refrigerator, with a combination dial that gleamed despite the years underground. Marcus sat back on his heels, staring at his discovery. His mind raced with possibilities. What could be inside? Why had someone, presumably his great-great-grandfather, hidden it beneath the floorboards? He tried the handle, but of course it was locked. The combination dial spun freely in his hands, but without the right numbers, it might as well have been a solid block of steel. Marcus examined every inch of the safe, looking for clues, but found nothing except a small engraving on the front. EWJ 1925. Elijah Washington Johnson. His great-great-grandfather's initials, and apparently the year the safe was made or hidden. As the afternoon sun slanted through the warehouse windows, casting long shadows across the floor, Marcus realized he was in way over his head. He needed help, But who could he trust with something this big? His mother would worry herself sick and probably make him return everything to the lawyers. His few acquaintances at school would either think he was lying or try to take advantage of him. Then he thought of Jalen. His best friend since middle school, the only person who'd stuck by him when his grandmother got sick and he had to miss school to take care of her. Jalen was smart, loyal, and most importantly, he knew how to keep a secret. Marcus took dozens of photos with his phone, documenting everything from different angles. The safe, the warehouse, the loose floorboards, he wanted to capture every detail. As he prepared to leave, he took one last look around the enormous space. This warehouse represented something he never had before, a real connection to his family's past. His grandmother had told him stories, sure, but they were always vague, filled with gaps and half-remembered details. She'd spoken of ancestors who were proud people and survivors, but never anything concrete. Now, standing in this place that had apparently belonged to his family for nearly a century, Marcus felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Whatever was in that safe, money, documents, family heirlooms, it was his inheritance, his legacy. But as he locked the warehouse door behind him and pocketed the keys, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced around the empty street, seeing nothing but parked cars and urban decay, but the sensation lingered. Walking to the bus stop, his mind churned with questions. Why had no one in his family ever mentioned this place? Why had his great-great-grandfather felt the need to hide a safe beneath the floorboards? And most unsettling of all, if this inheritance was rightfully his, why did he feel like he was keeping a secret from his own family? The bus ride home felt endless. Marcus stared out the window at the familiar neighborhood sliding past, but his thoughts remained in that dusty warehouse with its hidden treasure. Tomorrow, he would bring Jalen. Tomorrow, they would try to open the safe. But tonight, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if his life was about to change forever. The inheritance letter lay on his nightstand, proof that this wasn't all just an elaborate dream. Somewhere in the darkness, that warehouse waited for him, along with whatever secrets his great-great-grandfather had buried beneath its floors. He fell asleep clutching his phone, the photos of the safe glowing in his dreams like a beacon calling him toward an uncertain future. "You're telling me you own a warehouse with a hidden safe, and you didn't think to mention this yesterday?" Jalen Matthews raised an eyebrow as they stood outside the brick building the next afternoon. His backpack was loaded with tools he'd borrowed from his dad's garage, a stethoscope, various screwdrivers, and even a small hammer. "I needed time to process it myself," Marcus replied, fumbling with the keys. "Besides, would you have believed me if I just called and said, 'Hey, want to help me crack open a century-old safe?'" Jalen grinned. "Fair point. Though I still think we should have brought more equipment. These old safes aren't like the ones in movies where you just listen for clicks." The warehouse felt different with Jalen there, less mysterious, more like an adventure waiting to happen. Marcus led his friend to the back corner where the safe sat exposed in its dusty hiding place. In the daylight streaming through the windows, it looked even more imposing. "Damn, Marcus. This thing is legit." Jalen knelt beside the safe, running his hands over its surface. "Look at this craftsmanship. They don't make them like this anymore." For the next 2 hours, they tried everything. Jalen pressed the stethoscope against the safe's door while Marcus slowly turned the dial, listening for the telltale clicks that might reveal the combination. They researched safe-cracking techniques on their phones, tried common combinations like birthdays and addresses, and even attempted to find patterns in the serial numbers. Nothing worked. "Wait," Marcus said suddenly, sitting back on his heels. "The engraving says 1925, right? What if—" He thought about his grandmother's stories, the few concrete dates she'd ever mentioned. She always said great-great-grandpa was born in 1885. If he was 40 in 1925, try 40-18-85, Jalen suggested. Marcus's hands shook as he turned the dial. Right to 40, left to 18, right to 85. He pulled the handle. Nothing. "Maybe 18-85-40? Jalen offered. Still nothing. Marcus slumped against the wall, frustrated. There has to be something we're missing. Some clue he left behind. Jalen had wandered over to the old desk in the corner and was sifting through the papers scattered across its surface. Marcus, come look at this. On the desk lay a yellow newspaper clipping, so brittle it looked like it might crumble at a touch. The headline read, "Local businessman opens second location," and featured a photo of a well-dressed black man standing in front of a store. The caption identified him as Elijah Johnson, but it was the date that caught Marcus's attention, October 12, 1925. October 12th, Marcus whispered. October 12th, 25. They rushed back to the safe. Marcus's fingers were steadier this time as he input the combination. Right to 10, left to 12, right to 25. The dial clicked into place with a satisfying finality. He pulled the handle. The massive door swung open with a deep, resonant creak that seemed to echo through the decades. Both boys fell silent, staring into the dark interior of the safe. Marcus reached for his phone's flashlight, and what the light revealed made them both gasp. Stacks of gold coins gleamed from cloth bags, their surfaces catching the light like tiny suns. Beside them lay bundles of papers tied with ribbon, stock certificates, Marcus realized, though the company names were unfamiliar. But it was the envelope marked, "For my future," in careful handwriting that made Marcus's hands tremble. "Is this real?" Jalen whispered, reaching out to touch one of the coin bags before pulling his hand back as if it might burn him. Marcus carefully lifted the envelope and opened it. Inside was a letter written in the same careful script, the ink faded but still legible. "To whoever finds this treasure, I pray it is someone of my blood. My name is Elijah Washington Johnson, and I am writing this in the year of our Lord 1925. By the time you read this, I will likely be long gone, but my legacy lives on in these coins and certificates. I came to this city with nothing but the clothes on my back and a determination to build something lasting. Through hard work and God's grace, I built a successful business, 3 stores and this warehouse. But these are dangerous times for a black man with wealth. I have seen too many of our people lose everything to jealousy, hatred, and laws designed to keep us down. So I hide this treasure, not out of greed, but out of hope. Hope that one day, my descendants will live in a world where they can claim their inheritance without fear. Hope that this money will lift them up when they need it most. The coins are genuine gold, purchased when my business was at its peak. The stock certificates are from companies I believed would grow. Some may be worthless now, but others might surprise you. Use this wealth wisely. Help your family. Help your community. Make me proud. Remember always, we are not just survivors. We are builders, dreamers, and we deserve every good thing this world has to offer. Your ancestor, Elijah Washington Johnson. P.S. If you are reading this, then my plan worked. But be careful who you trust with this knowledge. Family secrets have a way of bringing out both the best and worst in people." Marcus's voice cracked as he read the last line aloud. Tears he didn't expect were streaming down his face, and he noticed Jalen wiping his eyes too. "Your great-great-grandfather was incredible," Jalen said softly. "He knew exactly what he was doing." Marcus stared at the treasure before them, not just the gold and certificates, but the wisdom and love contained in that letter. His ancestor had literally invested in his future, hiding wealth during an era when black success was dangerous, trusting that someday his family would need it. But as the initial euphoria faded, reality set in. This wasn't just a windfall, it was a responsibility. And Elijah's warning about family secrets echoed in Marcus's mind. "What do we do now?" Jalen asked. Marcus looked at his best friend, then back at the treasure that had waited nearly a century for him to find it. "We figure out how to honor his memory. But first I need to tell my family." As they carefully closed the safe and reset the combination, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that finding the treasure was only the beginning of his story, not the end. The Johnson family Sunday dinner had always been sacred ground, a time when relatives gathered at Aunt Rose's house to share food, gossip, and memories. But this particular Sunday, Marcus felt like he was carrying dynamite in his pocket. He'd spent the entire week wrestling with how to break the news. Should he tell his mother first? Start with the older relatives who might remember family stories? In the end, he decided to share it with everyone at once, figuring transparency was the best approach. "Before we eat," Marcus announced, standing up from the crowded dining table, "I have something incredible to share with all of you." The room fell silent. Aunt Rose paused mid-pour with the sweet tea pitcher. His mother looked concerned, probably expecting news about school or work. His various cousins, uncles, and extended family members turned their attention to him with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. Marcus pulled out printouts of the photos he'd taken, the letter, the safe, the coins. His hands trembled slightly as he began to speak. "A few weeks ago, I inherited a warehouse from our great-great-grandfather, Elijah Washington Johnson. Inside, I found a hidden safe with gold coins, stock certificates, and this letter." He read Elijah's letter aloud, his voice growing stronger with each word. As he spoke, he watched faces around the table transform, eyes widening, mouths dropping open, some relatives leaning forward in disbelief. "Sweet Jesus," whispered Aunt Rose, fanning herself with a napkin. "That's Uncle Eli. Mama used to tell stories about him when I was little." "How much money are we talking about?" asked Uncle Jerome, his voice tight with barely contained excitement. "We're not sure yet. The coins alone could be worth a lot, and some of those stock certificates might still be valuable." The room erupted in chatter. Everyone was talking at once, asking questions, making plans, calculating possibilities. But Marcus noticed one person who hadn't said a word. His cousin Derek, 28 years old and usually the loudest voice in any room, sat frozen in his chair. His face had gone pale, and he was staring at the photos like they contained his worst nightmare. "Derek?" Marcus's mother called out. "You're awful quiet. What do you think about all this?" Derek's eyes snapped up, and for just a moment, Marcus saw something that made his stomach drop, not surprise, but recognition. And fear. It's amazing, Marcus. Really amazing." Derek's voice sounded strained, artificial. I need some air." He stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair, and headed for the back door. Marcus watched him go, a cold feeling settling in his chest. "Don't mind Derek," Aunt Rose said with a wave of her hand. "You know how he gets overwhelmed by big news. Now tell us more about this warehouse." But Marcus found it hard to concentrate on the continuing questions and excitement. Derek's reaction felt wrong, like a note played off-key in a beautiful song. After dinner, as the family was cleaning up and making plans to visit the warehouse together, Marcus stepped outside. He found Derek sitting on the back porch steps, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. "You okay, man?" Derek jumped, then tried to force a smile. "Yeah, just wow. What a day, right?" Marcus sat down beside him. They'd never been particularly close. Derek was 12 years older and had always treated Marcus like a little kid, but something in his cousin's demeanor demanded attention. "Derek, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Have you ever heard of this warehouse before? Or Uncle Eli's treasure?" Derek was quiet for so long that Marcus thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My grandfather, your great-grandfather's brother, he used to tell stories. Said there was family money hidden somewhere, but nobody believed him. He died when I was 15, still talking about some treasure that rightfully belonged to all of us." Marcus felt his heart skip. "All of us?" "The whole family. He said Uncle Eli had no right to hide it away like that. Said it should have been divided up fairly from the beginning." Derek took a long drag from his cigarette. "But like I said, nobody believed the old man. We thought he was just, living in the past. But you believed him." Derek's laugh was bitter. "I spent years looking for that warehouse. Years, Marcus. I searched property records, talked to old-timers in the neighborhood, even hired a private investigator with money I couldn't afford to spend. I turned it into an obsession." The pieces clicked into place in Marcus's mind. "That's why you've been struggling financially. Why you borrowed money from Uncle Jerome last year. I was so sure I'd find it. So sure it would solve all my problems. Derek stubbed out his cigarette with more force than necessary. And then you, a 16-year-old kid, just inherit it. Like it's nothing. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Derek, you're scaring me a little bit. No, I'm not. I don't mean it like that. Derek turned to face him, and Marcus could see tears in his eyes. I'm happy for you, Marcus. I really am. It's just hard, you know. Knowing I was so close all these years. But there's enough for everyone. I want to share it with the family. I know you do. You're a good kid. Derek stood up, brushing off his jeans. I just need some time to process all this. It's bringing up a lot of old feelings. As Derek headed back inside, Marcus remained on the porch, staring up at the darkening sky. Elijah's warning echoed in his mind. Family secrets have a way of bringing out both the best and worst in people. He was beginning to understand that finding the treasure might have been the easy part. The real challenge was figuring out what to do with it, and with the family secrets it had unearthed. Inside the house, he could hear his relatives still talking excitedly about the discovery. But now their voices sounded different to him, layered with new meaning. How many of them had heard whispers about family treasure over the years? How many had their own secrets about Uncle Eli and his hidden wealth? Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled to Jalen's number. He needed to talk to someone who wasn't family, someone who could help him think clearly about what was happening. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear: this inheritance was about to test his family in ways he'd never imagined. 3 days passed before Marcus worked up the courage to call Derek. The conversation at Sunday dinner had left him feeling unsettled, and Jalen's advice kept echoing in his head. Sometimes the only way through a problem is straight through it. Derek? It's Marcus. Can we meet up? I think we need to talk. Derek's voice sounded tired over the phone. Yeah, I figured you'd call. Come by my apartment around 7. And Marcus? Bring those photos again. There's some stuff I need to show you. Derek's apartment was smaller than Marcus expected, cramped but clean. The walls were covered with family photos, some Marcus recognized, others featuring faces he'd never seen. What caught his attention immediately was a cardboard box sitting open on the coffee table, filled with yellowed papers and old photographs. I've been up all night going through this, Derek said, gesturing to the box. After Sunday dinner, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what Grandpa used to tell me, so I dug out all his old papers. Marcus sat down across from him, studying his cousin's face. Derek looked older somehow, worn down by whatever he'd been wrestling with. Marcus, I owe you an apology. And an explanation. Derek reached into the box and pulled out a faded photograph. This is my grandfather, Thomas Johnson, Uncle Eli's younger brother. The photo showed a serious-looking man in his 50s, standing next to what appeared to be a small shop. But it was the building in the background that made Marcus's breath catch. He recognized that brick facade. That's the warehouse, Marcus whispered. Grandpa worked there with Uncle Eli in the 1920s. They were partners, at least at first. Derek pulled out another photo, this one showing 2 men standing side by side, both smiling. That's them together in 1924, a year before Uncle Eli hid the safe. Marcus studied the photograph. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Both men had the same strong jaw, the same determined eyes that Marcus saw in his own reflection. What happened between them? Derek sifted through the papers, pulling out a letter written in careful handwriting. This is from Uncle Eli to my grandfather, dated March 1925. Listen to this, Thomas. I know you disagree with my decision, but these are dangerous times. The business is doing too well, attracting too much attention. I've heard talk around town, seen the looks we get. It's not safe for us to be so visible with our success. I'm going to secure our assets until things improve. Trust me, brother. This is for all of us. So Uncle Eli was trying to protect the family, Marcus said slowly. That's what he thought he was doing. But Grandpa saw it differently. Derek pulled out another letter, this one more hastily written. This is Grandpa's response. Eli, you can't just make decisions for the whole family without consulting us. That money belongs to all of us, your children, my children, everyone who helped build what we have. Hiding it away like some miser isn't protection, it's selfishness. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. They had a falling out. A bad one. According to Grandpa's journals, Uncle Eli never told anyone where he hid the money. He died in 1928, taking the secret with him. The family split apart after that, some sided with Uncle Eli's memory, others with Grandpa. That's why there are Johnsons scattered all over the city who barely speak to each other. Derek pulled out a family tree drawn in pencil on a piece of notebook paper. Marcus was amazed to see how extensive it was, dozens of names branching out from Elijah and Thomas Johnson. All these people are our relatives? Most of them, yeah. Grandpa spent years trying to map out the whole family, hoping that if he could find everyone, they could search for the treasure together. Derek's finger traced along the branches. See this line here? That's your grandmother's branch. And this one over here? That's Cousin LaShonda's family. They moved to Detroit in the 50s. And over here. Marcus stared at the family tree, overwhelmed by the sheer number of people connected to his story. Derek, this is incredible, but it's also terrifying. Are you telling me that all these people have a claim to the inheritance? I'm not telling you anything, Derek said firmly. I'm just sharing what I know, what Grandpa believed. The legal inheritance is yours, Marcus. That lawyer's letter made it clear. They sat in silence for a moment, both staring at the scattered papers and photographs that told the story of a family divided by secrets and misunderstandings. Can I ask you something? Marcus said finally. Why are you showing me all this? You could have kept it to yourself, let me believe the inheritance was simple. Derek leaned back in his chair, a sad smile crossing his face. Because I spent 20 years being angry about something I didn't fully understand. I hated Uncle Eli for hiding the money. I resented your side of the family for supposedly getting special treatment. But reading these letters again, seeing that photo of him and Grandpa together. He picked up the photograph of the two brothers, their arms around each other's shoulders. They loved each other, Marcus. They were trying to do right by their families, they just disagreed about how. Uncle Eli thought he was protecting everyone by hiding the treasure. Grandpa thought he was protecting everyone by keeping it accessible. They were both right, and they were both wrong. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. What do you think Uncle Eli would want me to do? Derek was quiet for a long time, studying the family tree. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but certain. I think he'd want his family back together. All of it. The money was never the real treasure, Marcus. It was just his way of trying to take care of people he loved. As Marcus gathered up the photos and papers, preparing to leave, Derek caught his arm. There's one more thing. I've been keeping track of some of our relatives over the years. LaShonda in Detroit? She's been struggling to pay for her daughter's medical treatments. And Cousin Robert here in town? He's about to lose his house. Marcus nodded, understanding. The money could really help them. It could help a lot of people. But Marcus, that's a decision only you can make. I just wanted you to have all the information. Walking home that night, Marcus felt the weight of his inheritance in a completely new way. It wasn't just gold coins and stock certificates anymore. It was nearly a century of family history, broken relationships, and people who needed help. Uncle Eli had been right about one thing: family secrets really did bring out both the best and worst in people. But maybe, just maybe, they could also bring out the truth. The next morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen table surrounded by papers, Derek's family tree, printouts of stock prices, and a yellow legal pad covered with his own calculations. His mother found him there when she came home from her night shift, still in her scrubs. "Baby, you've been up all night again," she said, pouring herself coffee. "This inheritance is consuming you. Mom, did you know we have family in Detroit? And that Cousin Robert is about to lose his house." She paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "Where is this coming from?" Marcus spent the next hour telling her everything: Derek's revelations, the family tree, the story of the two brothers who'd let disagreement tear their family apart. His mother listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to sadness to something that looked like relief. "I always wondered why we didn't have much contact with the extended family," she said finally. "Your grandmother would get sad sometimes when she talked about the old days, but she never explained why. Mom, I think I know what I need to do, but I'm going to need your help." That afternoon, Marcus and Derek stood in the warehouse together, the safe open between them. They'd spent the morning getting the coins appraised. The gold alone was worth over $180,000. Several of the stock certificates, incredibly, were still valuable. Companies that had survived and thrived over the decades, their shares now worth tens of thousands of dollars. "So we're looking at about $340,000 total," Derek said, staring at the spreadsheet on Marcus's phone. That's life-changing money." "For a lot of people," Marcus agreed. "Which is exactly why I can't keep it all to myself." He pulled out the plan he'd been working on all week, written in neat handwriting on several sheets of paper. "I want to divide it into 3 parts. 1/3 goes to immediate family members who are struggling, people like cousin LaShonda and Robert. 1/3 gets invested in a scholarship fund, like Uncle Eli's letter suggested. And 1/3. Yeah? 1/3 goes toward bringing the family back together. I want to find everyone on this family tree and invite them to a reunion. A real one, where we can tell Uncle Eli's story properly and maybe heal some of these old wounds." Derek was quiet for a long moment, studying the plan. "Marcus, you realize you're talking about giving away almost all of it, right? You could keep this money, pay for college, buy a house, set yourself up for life." "I could. But then I'd be doing exactly what Uncle Eli was afraid of, letting money divide the family instead of unite it. And if some of the family members don't want to be found? If they're not interested in reuniting?" Marcus shrugged. "Then at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I honored what he really wanted." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and Derek became an unlikely team. Derek's years of research into the family tree proved invaluable as they tracked down relatives across the country. Some were easy to find. Cousin LaShonda in Detroit was listed in the phone book. Others required more detective work. The conversations weren't always easy. Some relatives were suspicious, wondering what Marcus wanted from them. Others were emotional, sharing stories about family members who'd passed away or struggles they'd been facing alone. But slowly, a picture emerged of a family that had been scattered but never truly broken. Uncle Robert broke down crying when Marcus offered to help with his mortgage. LaShonda's daughter would be able to get the surgery she needed. A cousin in California who'd been working 3 jobs to support her elderly mother suddenly had options she'd never dared to dream of. "You know what the best part is?" Derek said one evening as they worked on reunion invitations. "It's not just the money helping people. It's the connections. Cousin Sarah in Atlanta had no idea that Robert was struggling, but she's a loan officer at a bank. She's going to help him refinance even after we cover his immediate expenses." Marcus smiled. Uncle Eli would have loved that. The scholarship fund was Derek's idea. "Let's call it the Elijah Johnson Entrepreneurship Scholarship," he suggested. "For young people who want to start their own businesses but don't have the resources." "Perfect. And we'll base it at the warehouse. Fix the place up, turn it into a community center where people can come for business mentoring and support." As the reunion date approached, Marcus found himself thinking more and more about Uncle Eli's original letter. The man had been trying to protect his family's future, but he never imagined that future would include dozens of relatives he never met, living in cities that barely existed in his time. The night before the reunion, Marcus and Derek sat in the warehouse, now cleaned and decorated with family photos spanning nearly a century. The safe stood open in the corner, empty but somehow more meaningful than when it had been full of treasure. "You nervous?" Derek asked. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "What if this doesn't work? What if people are still angry about the past? Then we'll deal with it." "But Marcus, you've already done something incredible. You've shown our family what Uncle Eli's real legacy was supposed to be, not the money, but the love behind it. Marcus looked around the warehouse, imagining it filled with relatives he'd only recently learned existed. Some would be meeting each other for the first time. Others would be reconnecting after decades of separation. Derek, can I tell you something? Sure. I'm glad you knew about the treasure. I'm glad you helped me understand the whole story. I couldn't have done this right without you. Derek smiled. That's what family is for, cousin. Even when we don't always know we're family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Marcus knew. Managing a scholarship fund, maintaining the community center, keeping dozens of relatives connected across the country. It would be a lot of work. But tonight, sitting in Uncle Eli's warehouse with the cousin who'd become his partner in healing old wounds, Marcus felt something he never experienced before, the weight and warmth of being part of something bigger than himself. The treasure had been found, but the real inheritance was just beginning. The warehouse had never looked so alive. Sunlight streamed through the newly cleaned windows, illuminating tables laden with food and walls covered with family photos spanning 5 generations. Marcus stood near the entrance, watching as relatives he'd only recently met mingled with cousins he'd known his whole life. Marcus! LaShonda's voice carried across the room as she approached with her daughter, Kiana, whose surgery had been successful thanks to the inheritance. I still can't believe all this. 3 months ago, I was working double shifts and praying for a miracle. How's Kiana doing? See for yourself. LaShonda gestured to where her 8-year-old daughter was playing with a group of children, her laughter ringing through the warehouse. The doctors say she's healing perfectly. And she keeps asking when we can come back to visit our new family. Marcus smiled, but his attention was drawn to a commotion near the safe, which they'd left open as part of the display. An elderly woman was standing before it, tears streaming down her face, while several relatives gathered around her. That's Miss Dorothy, Derek said, appearing at Marcus's side. She's Uncle Eli's last surviving grandchild. 92 years old and sharper than most people half her age. Marcus approached the group carefully. Miss Dorothy was holding one of the original photos from the safe, her weathered hands trembling. Child, she said when she saw Marcus. Do you know what this picture is? Marcus looked at the photo. It showed Uncle Eli standing with a group of children in front of the warehouse. I'm not sure. It was in the safe with everything else. That's my daddy with all his grandchildren, taken just a month before he died. I'm right there in the front row, barely 5 years old. She pointed to a little girl with pigtails. He told us that day that he was leaving us something special, but we had to be patient and wait for the right time. 90 years is a long time to wait, Marcus said gently. Miss Dorothy laughed, wiping her eyes. Honey, when you get to be my age, you realize that time moves differently than you think. Daddy wasn't just hiding money. He was waiting for someone who would understand what family really means. The formal program began with Marcus standing where Uncle Eli had once conducted business. Looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, many not, he felt the weight of responsibility that had carried him through the past months. 3 months ago, I thought I was just a regular teenager from a small family, he began. I had no idea that I was part of something this big, this beautiful, this complicated. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Uncle Eli left us more than money. He left us a challenge, to be worthy of the sacrifice he made, to understand that taking care of each other isn't just nice, it's necessary. Marcus gestured to the scholarship display, where photos of the first 5 recipients were prominently featured. The Elijah Johnson Entrepreneurship Scholarship has already helped 5 young people start their own businesses. Maria in Phoenix opened a bakery. James right here in town started a landscaping company. And Kiana, he smiled at LaShonda's daughter, is already talking about becoming a doctor so she can help other kids like her. The applause was enthusiastic, but Marcus wasn't finished. But the scholarship is just the beginning. This warehouse is becoming a community center where anyone can come for business mentoring, financial literacy classes, and job training. We're calling it Elijah's Place. Derek stepped forward, holding a framed copy of Uncle Eli's original letter. We wanted to make sure everyone heard Daddy Eli's actual words, he said, and began to read the letter aloud. As Derek's voice filled the warehouse, Marcus watched faces around the room. Some people were hearing the story for the first time. Others, like Miss Dorothy, were finally understanding secrets they'd carried for decades. When Derek finished reading, Cousin Robert from across town stood up. "I want to say something," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "6 months ago, I was about to lose everything. My house, my pride, my hope. Marcus didn't just save my mortgage, he gave me back my faith and family. And I want to add something," called out Sarah from Atlanta. "I've been a loan officer for 15 years, but I've never seen anything like what's happening here. The ripple effects of this generosity are spreading far beyond just our family." As the afternoon wore on, stories emerged that Marcus had never heard. Miss Dorothy shared memories of Uncle Eli teaching her to count money in this very warehouse. A cousin from Seattle talked about starting a similar community program in his city. Children who just met were already making plans for next year's reunion. The moment that brought Marcus to tears came near the end of the day. Jalen, who'd been quietly documenting everything with his camera, approached him with a photo he'd just taken. It showed the entire family gathered around Uncle Eli's safe, with Miss Dorothy in the center holding the old photograph of her grandfather and his grandchildren. But what made it special was how perfectly the composition echoed the original. Same location, same sense of family, same hope for the future. "He would be so proud," Miss Dorothy said, appearing beside them to look at the photo. "Not just of what you found, but of what you've built." As the sun set through the warehouse windows, casting long shadows across the nearly empty space, Marcus stood with Derek and Jalen, surveying the aftermath of the reunion. Tables were cleared, but contact information had been exchanged. Plans had been made. Connections had been forged. "So what's next?" Jalen asked. Marcus looked around the warehouse, his family's warehouse, his community's warehouse. "We keep building. We keep connecting. We keep honoring Uncle Eli's real legacy." Derek picked up the last remaining photo from the display table, the one of Uncle Eli and his brother Thomas, arms around each other's shoulders. "You know what I think Uncle Eli would say if he could see this?" "What?" "He'd say the safe was never really locked. We just needed to find the right combination, and it wasn't numbers. It was family." As they locked up the warehouse for the night, Marcus felt a deep sense of completion. The inheritance had been more than he'd ever imagined, but not in the way he'd expected. Uncle Eli had given him gold and stocks, yes, but more importantly, he'd given him a purpose, a community, and a legacy worthy of the next generation. The warehouse stood quiet in the darkness, but it was no longer empty. It was full of possibility, full of connection, full of the love that had waited nearly a century to bring a family home.